This time we are taking you to Mexico City in 1940, a loud, crowded, colorful capital where a wave of immigrants from a faraway land are quietly building something incredible. Because before this was a story about the richest man on earth, it was a story about a scared teenager who ran for his life. Picture this. It is 1902. A 14-year-old boy named Julian steps off a boat in Mexico, all alone. He has fled Lebanon to escape being forced into the army. He speaks no Spanish. He has no money. He has nothing but his own two hands and a fire to build a better life. And build he does. Julian opens a little dry goods store called the Star of the East. He works like a machine. And slowly, this penniless immigrant boy becomes a respected, wealthy businessman in his new country. In 1940, Julian has a son, Carlos Slim Helu. And from the moment Carlos can walk, his father becomes his teacher. But he does not teach him to play, he teaches him money. Every single week, Julian gives each of his children a little notebook, a ledger, and a small allowance. And they have to write down every single peso they spend, every sweet, every toy, every coin. Then they sit down with their father and go through it together, line by line, like a proper business meeting. Where did the money go? Was that a smart choice or a waste? What did you learn? For most kids, this would be boring torture. For Carlos, it was the greatest gift his father could ever give him, the language of money itself. By 11, Carlos is investing in government savings bonds and learning about compound interest, how money can quietly make more money while you sleep. By 12, he is buying real shares in a real bank. Picture that. A 12-year-old kid reading the stock market pages like other children read comic books, tracking his little fortune growing in his notebook. Then, when Carlos is just 13, tragedy strikes. His beloved father dies. The teacher is gone, but every lesson Julian ever taught is now burned into his son's mind forever. His name is Carlos Slim, and he had 86,400 seconds every single day to turn a ledger notebook into the biggest fortune on planet Earth. This is 86,400 stories. Episode 28, The Man Who Bought His Country. Carlos grew up and studied civil engineering at university, but numbers were his true language. While he was still a student, he was already teaching maths and trading on the stock market on the side. He did not chase a fancy job or a big fancy title. He became a trader, buying and selling, watching the numbers all day, always hunting for value that other people had walked right past. And he lived by one golden rule that his father had burned into him. Save first, invest wisely, and never ever spend more than you earn. That one simple rule, followed for a lifetime, is the secret engine behind almost every great fortune ever built. While other rich people bought flashy cars and giant mansions, Carlos lived simply. He did not care about showing off. He drove an old car. He lived in the same house for decades. He did not even use a computer. He kept everything in his notebooks, just like his dad taught him. Every peso, tracked. In the 1960s and 70s, he started buying companies, but not exciting. Flashy, glamorous companies, boring ones. A soft drink bottling company, a printing company, tire makers, mining companies, the stuff nobody talks about at parties. But Carlos understood something most people miss. Boring businesses make steady money year after year after year. He built a giant holding company called Grupo Corso and just kept quietly collecting solid businesses like a kid collecting trading cards. Now here is where the trap kicks in, but not for Carlos, for his entire country. In 1982, Mexico's economy completely collapsed. It was a disaster. The currency crashed. Businesses went bankrupt overnight, and every rich foreign investor in the country panicked and started running for the exits, selling everything they owned for pennies and fleeing to America. Everyone was terrified. Everyone was selling. The whole country was on fire. And Carlos Slim did the exact opposite of everyone else. While the entire world was screaming, "Sell!" Carlos started to buy. That terror in the market became his silent grind, and he was about to turn a national disaster into the greatest shopping spree in history. Think about how much courage this took. The whole economy is crashing. Everyone smart is running away. Carlos Slim walked straight into the fire with his arms wide open. He believed in Mexico when nobody else did. He said, "My country will recover, and when it does, I will own the best pieces of it." So he bought and bought and bought insurance companies, cigarette companies, restaurants, banks, department stores, all for a tiny fraction of what they were really worth. That was the ultimate vision. He was not gambling. He was buying real, solid businesses at panic prices. Businesses that would be worth 10, 20, 50 times more once the fear passed. And then the fear passed. Mexico recovered. And Carlos Slim was suddenly one of the richest men in the entire country because he had bought half of it while it was on sale. But his biggest move was still coming. In 1990, the Mexican government decided to sell off its old, sleepy, state-owned telephone company. It was called Telmex, and Carlos grabbed it. Everyone ignored the tiny, pathetic little mobile phone part of the business. It had just 25,000 customers in a whole country of 90 million people. To everyone else, it looked completely pointless, a waste of time. But Carlos looked at that same tiny business and saw the future. A future where every single person, rich or poor, young or old, would one day carry a phone in their pocket everywhere they went. So he did something absolutely genius, which he called the Gillette plan. Here is the trick. Just like razor companies, sell you the razor handle super cheap and then make their real money selling you the blades again and again forever. Carlos sold the phones themselves cheap, almost at a loss, to get them into everybody's hands. And then he made his massive fortune on the prepaid phone cards that people had to buy again and again and again, week after week, year after year. Telmex and his mobile company, America Mobile, exploded across all of Latin America. Carlos Slim now controlled the phones in the pockets of hundreds of millions of people. By the 2000s, Carlos Slim was not just rich. He was not just very rich. He was on a completely different level to almost every other human being alive. The average Mexican person spent part of almost every single day using something Carlos Slim owned. His phone network, his shops, his banks, his restaurants. People started jokingly calling the country Slimlandia because it felt like he owned all of it. That was the ultimate boss move. Think about it. A civil engineer, the son of a penniless Lebanese immigrant who had arrived with nothing, had quietly built an empire so massive it reached into the daily life of nearly every single person in his entire nation. Not through luck, not through inheritance alone, through decades of discipline, patience, and buying when everyone else was too afraid. And then, in 2010, it finally happened. The most famous money magazine in the world, Forbes, crowned Carlos Slim the #1 richest person on the entire planet. Richer than Bill Gates, software king. Richer than Warren Buffett, the investing legend. Richer than every oil baron and tech titan alive. At one point, his personal fortune passed $100 billion, a number so large it is almost impossible to imagine. The grandson of penniless immigrants, a man who still wrote his numbers in a ledger notebook by hand, was now the single #1 richest human being on the entire planet Earth. And this was no fluke. He held on to that crown for years, staying at the very top of the world, while other billionaires rose and fell around him. But here is what makes Carlos different. He never forgot his father's lessons. He still lived in the same house. He still drove himself around. He still kept his numbers in notebooks by hand. He gave billions to charity through his foundation, funding education, healthcare, and jobs for millions of people across Latin America. He proved that you do not need to look rich to be rich. You do not need mansions and jets to win. You need discipline, patience, and the courage to bet big when everyone else is running scared. So now I have to ask you something. What is your excuse? Carlos Slim was the grandson of immigrants who arrived in a strange country with nothing but the clothes on their backs. He lost his father, his teacher, his hero, the man who taught him everything, at just 13 years old. He lived in a country that crashed and burned in 1982, while everyone around him lost their fortunes. And instead of panicking and running away like everyone else, he ran straight toward the fire with his arms wide open. And he became the richest person on the entire planet, using nothing but a ledger, patience, and nerve. That is true power. Not the loud kind with gold chains, private jets, and fast cars. The quiet kind, the kind that keeps its head down, tracks every single peso in a humble notebook, stays patient for years, and then pounces like a lion the moment everyone else is too scared to move. The trap you are sitting in right now, the crisis, the fear, the bad news, the feeling that everything is falling apart, Carlos Slim would look at that and smile. Because the greatest fortunes in history are built in the middle of chaos, when everyone else is running away. Your crisis might be your biggest opportunity in disguise. He did all of it inside the same 86,400 seconds you and I get every single morning. Same clock, same hours, different choices. Take the pain of the trap and buy while others panic. Master. The hustle, by tracking every single number like your future depends on it. Because it does. And fight for the ultimate flex. The quiet, unshakable wealth that no crash can ever take from you. The pen is in your hands. And possibility has no postcode.